I'm going to call this meeting to order. We're expecting that Claire Toutot may join us in progress, but at this point, as the vice chair, I'll start the meeting.
Before you do, Glenn, do you know if the traffic is northbound problem or southbound?
I don't know. No, there's some other issues for Claire, so it's not traffic. Okay.
It was okay coming.
No, we'll wait. Okay, I would like to start. The council will introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Dan Haggerty.
Tamar Powell.
Michelle Weil.
Len Erickson.
Dave Olson.
Barbara Matthewson.
Okay. Ellie Dahlman, supervisor's aide, is not here yet, but is expected to come. So Harvey, we'll start with you for.
Harvey Rohrbeck, Mayor of Half Moon Bay. I'll be brief. The City Council will be hearing from the county about their regulations for cannabis production. And the reason for that, among other things, is you probably know at the end of Frenchman's Creek Road, there's a set of greenhouses that is in the process of being approved for growing cannabis, and that certainly affects the Midcoast. But there are two other properties that might end up in the cannabis industry. One of them is the Schickenberg Nursery. If you look at online, they're selling their place, and they are touting the fact that they've been approved for cannabis production. In point of fact, because they're in the city, they've been if they get their permits, they could only grow starter plants. But the most troubling aspect of what's going on is that Bay City Flowers has announced that they're going to sell their greenhouse properties, and it's very possible that they'll end up growing cannabis. So this is of interest to people who want to know about what's going on in the cannabis industry. And speaking of Bay City Flowers, I announced last meeting that the city is organizing a job fair for the poor folks there who've been laid off. It's going to be a job fair and a services fair. And last week we didn't know the time or location, but now we do. It's still going to be on Friday, the 25th, but it'll be at 5:30 to 7:30 at the Half Moon Bay Library. So we're hoping to get a lot of services, employers. We've already got a few employers who are going to be there. So if any of you know people who are looking for a job or can offer a job, please consider getting in touch with the city for the Friday job fair. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Any questions from the council? Public? Yes?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
As I understand it, when the Half Moon Bay city limits, it's only starter plants.
Right.
One at Frenchman creates its full-blown.
According to the Half Moon Bay Review, there are 4 greenhouses. 3 of them they're proposing to grow mature plants, and 1 of them would be starter plants.
The interesting statistic on plants is that one plant, depending on the growth stage, takes up to 6 gallons of water a day. Do you have that one?
They're going to grow them hydroponic.
And they have a well on site.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I was just wondering if these, how many jobs, new jobs this would create?
The one on Frenchman's Creek Road, according to the review, you're talking about a handful of jobs because it's really heavily automated. I don't know about the other 2 proposals, how many jobs will be involved. I'm hoping that they'll be able to employ some of the people who've been laid off.
But will we assume that it'd be mostly replacement jobs for people that are, whatever they're growing here now? And then, like the
Well, they're growing flowers at the Bay City Flowers. We're not talking about anybody growing flowers again. It's just a dying industry.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just talking in terms of employees, that growing cannabis will require more employees. It sounds like we're saying it would be fewer employees.
I really can't answer. It depends on how automated the new facilities are. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Harvey. For those of the members of the audience, our next item will be Ellie Dahlman for the supervisor's report. But if you want to have either a comment to the council on things not on the agenda or speak to an item on the agenda, if you would get a speaker slip and be ready with that. So Ellie, you're next up.
Great. Good evening, Midcoast Community Council and Midcoast community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman. I'm here on behalf of San Mateo County Supervisor Don Horsley, and I have 3 updates for you this evening. The first 2 items are both from the recent Board of Supervisors meeting. The first, just to report back that the Board of Supervisors did approve Supervisor Horsley's request to provide funding to Abundant Grace to support the Farm Employment Opportunities Program located in Half Moon Bay, as well as to support the, or to contribute towards Abundant Grace's purchase of property to be used for Workforce Development Center in the city of Half Moon Bay. There's more information. I'll leave the board memo here. It's also, additional info is available on the supervisors' board agendas. And the second item that I have for you is just to update you, the Office of Sustainability during the Board of Supervisors meeting held a study session to discuss building standards, REACH codes. And if you haven't heard of REACH codes are local enhancements to state building codes and standards, which can be adopted by individual jurisdictions to meet local climate and building goals. And so the next code cycle begins January 1 of next year, and REACH codes must be filed with the California Building Standards Commission and California Energy Commission. Supervisor Horsley asked that I share this information with you. I have the board memo as well as the PowerPoint that was shared during the board meeting, which includes a timeline and some more information. But Supervisor Horsley and the Office of Sustainability staff are really at this point in time seeking input from the community and from the board, input and direction on any energy REACH code and green building code amendment measures that staff should develop and return to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. And one other item, during the board meeting, the board members also suggested that that staff consider working with Peninsula Clean Energy to provide rebates for retrofitting existing structures to increase potential for impact. As I understand, I believe the REACH codes typically apply to new construction, and so that was one of the requests from the Board of Supervisors for additional information. But I will leave those documents with you. And if you have any additional questions, I can connect you with the Office of Sustainability staff that are really the experts on this subject and would be very interested in your input.
For the second item on, that you mentioned, would you like us either to post a link to it?
For
to
the REACH
public?
codes?
Yes.
Let me follow up with staff, with the staff person in the Office of Sustainability to find out what the best, if they have a website or what the best mechanism for community input is. And I will, is there somebody I should connect them with?
Well, why don't you send it to me as a chair?
Okay.
The acting, yeah, we'll get
Great.
up to it. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Okay.
And then the third item I have,
I wanted to
Yes.
clarify for people who weren't aware of the agenda item, the main topic of discussion was limiting the ability to use gas in new construction, both residential and possibly also commercial buildings. There was a wide range. It's a very good discussion. It's well worth watching the video to get the full discussion. It goes well beyond what's in the PowerPoint.
and I think there was also a Daily Journal article published that is also another source of information as well. So thank you for adding that.
Great.
And the last item, which I think you may have heard at your last meeting, is that I just wanted to share with you all that this evening will be my last time here with the Midcoast Community Council as a liaison for Supervisor Don Horsley. As of November 4th, I will be moving to a new, I'll be at the county still, but moving to a new division, the Budget, Policy, and Performance team. So I just wanted to share that it's really been an honor to attend your meetings for almost the past 4 years. I've really learned a lot and appreciate everything that you all have shared. And Bray Hunter is also here in the audience, who will be Supervisor Horsley's liaison moving forward. So we're really excited to have her on the team, and again, I'm grateful to have had this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you all in my new capacity, hopefully in the future.
Okay, well, on behalf of the council as a whole, I want to.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You've been a great help to us.
Yeah, I look forward to continuing to serve as a resource, and I know Bray Hunter has interned with Supervisor Horsley's office for a number of summers, so this will be by no means new to her, but she'll be a great resource for you all as well.
Okay.
Welcome aboard, Bray.
Okay, thanks very much, Ellie. Okay, next up are members of the public who'd like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone so interested? Okay, if you would pass up your slips. Go ahead.
All right, I just have a quick announcement. I have not attended one of these before. Happy
Could you
to be
please
here.
introduce yourself first?
My name is April Larson. I am here on behalf of the Coastside CERT organization as the El Granada lead for CERT. And if you don't know what CERT is, it's Community Emergency Response Team, and we're under the direction of FEMA and CAL FIRE. So CAL FIRE directly is who trains up community emergency people to be trained in the event of emergency, to be kind of the pre-first responders. And under that capacity, you may have seen some of these signs around El Granada. We're doing an event on November 9th. It's going to be kind of an emergency preparedness fair almost. There's going to be tables set up and different games to play all around emergency preparedness. It's going to be at the fire station, and the fire chief is helping to organize this. So last week, I think there was Cynthia Sherrill was here, and she asked me to attend this one to also spread the word and just make everybody aware of what this is and see if anybody had any questions about it. That's about
Right, and that's at the El Granada Fire Station.
It's at the El Granada Fire Station. One thing that they're going to have there that people might be interested in is they're going to have the fire chief and his crew is going to have a schematic, big map about the size of this, that shows the evacuation plan for El Granada for fire, and one that shows tsunami, so that everybody can come and see, right where they're at and what they need to do. And as part of CERT, we've actually organized El Granada into 9 zones. So we're going to have another map. There's going to be 3 of these maps, maybe not quite this big, but almost as big, that show the 9 zones that we're organized into, and that's what I'm in charge of, is trying to get the community just aware of what zone they're in, what they can do, how we can help each other as a community.
Great.
That's about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about that.
Yes,
Are there
please.
any links available for people to be able to do that online if they're not able to attend the event?
Yes, and
On the
these.
maps?
Yes, on the maps for the evacuations and stuff, there's actually going to be, I think there is. There's flyers that are prepared that you can get from the fire station or get from me or get from somebody. You can go down to the fire station, Half Moon Bay, they actually have them down there as well. And then there's a website, coastsidecert.com, coastsidecert.com, and that can get you a lot of the same information. Any other questions?
Very good.
I just want to
Would
say thanks
anybody-
for coming, April.
Thank you.
I started CERT training last night at the firehouse.
That's right.
And I just want to encourage everyone to get involved. There are a lot of different communities forming. I think we have over about 30 different sub areas within Half Moon Bay and the coast and the Midcoast. So you'll probably be hearing more about this. There are, I think, over 800 people signed up on your mailing list now, and if anyone else wants to sign up, go to coastsidecert.com.
Yes, thank you. Should I leave a flyer anywhere? Do you guys
Sure,
want
just
to
pass it
table?
around here.
Or
Just
here?
the council would like to see if they can
Okay.
leave it out front.
I'll leave that one for the council. I'll put a couple of these out on the table up there. Is
Okay.
that all right?
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Lisa, you had your name down?
Lisa Ketchum, former Midcoast Community Council member and current County Planning Commissioner. Claire suggested it would be helpful at this point for me to explain a little bit about the Planning Commission and what their role is. I've noticed on Nextdoor there's some confusion when it is suggested that people write the Planning Commission, so I just wanted to, back up. I need to look at my notes. First, some dates. upcoming November 13 Planning Commission will have the Graywell Cove project. The RV park at the harbor could have been on the 27th, but it looks like they'll cancel that date. It's the day before Thanksgiving. So probably the RV park won't come to the Planning Commission until December 11. So the role of the Planning Commission, there's 5 commissioners, each appointed by the supervisor for their district. Thus, there's only 1 planning commissioner from the coast side. The commission is advisory to the Board of Supervisors on adoption of policies and plans for county general plan amendments, development regulations. The Planning Commission makes recommendations on their adoption or amendment by the Board of Supervisors. Examples of that would be Connect the Coast Side, otherwise, which is the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan, LCP, PUD amendment for the Cypress Point Phase 1 of that. So in those cases, the Planning Commission is just advisory. The Planning Commission is a decision maker for development permits issued by the county that require a public hearing. Examples would be Graywell Cove, that's a project. The RV park is a project. The expansion of Harbor Vista Inn. Planning Commission decisions can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors, which costs money, or if they're eligible, they can be appealed to the Coastal Commission, which is free. Not all projects are appealable to the Coastal Commission. So the Planning Commission does not set policy. We are appointed, not elected. In deciding whether to approve projects when it comes to us at a hearing, we must find that the project is consistent with the general plan, with the applicable zoning regulations, LCP policies, and CEQA, such as a neg deck, whatever, whether to adopt it. You can't just say, I don't like that, I don't want to vote for it. You have to say, it doesn't meet the findings. You have to point out what's, okay. So the Planning Commission meets the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month, same as the Midcoast Council, except it meets in the morning in Redwood City. It's an extra challenge for anybody who wants to attend. County planning staff sets the agenda, writes the staff report, and makes recommendation on the decision, and provides the findings for that decision, and forwards written public comments in batches to the commission before the hearing. So the any particular commissioner doesn't have any policy setting role, doesn't initiate anything. It has to be on an agenda, and the group acts by a vote. It's 5, it takes 5. So the staff report is posted by Friday before the Wednesday meeting. For the 4 Bayside commissioners for Coastside Project, that is likely the first time they've ever heard of the project. And there will be, if it's a complex project, there'll be a big fat staff report for them to spend their weekend going through or not, and then reading the correspondence that may have come in at that point. And as an individual commissioner, the only opportunity to educate or sway other commissioners is during that hearing. When I was on the council here, I could do the research, do a draft letter, make a presentation, whatever, and the council would discuss and decide if they supported that. On the Planning Commission, I don't get to do any of those things. I just show up, listen to the staff report, and then when the commission starts to discuss, that's when I can attempt to affect the project. If there is a letter from the Midcoast Council, clearly with substantive comments laying out what the concerns are and how those could be addressed, that letter is there for the other commissioners presumably have read by then. I can work off of that. If the community hasn't expressed their concerns, then I'm on my own. it would be tough, because like I say, the other commissioners are from the Bayside, and they don't know the background, and they have the recommendation from staff, and so I just, it is valuable to have written comments from the community that clearly state your concerns and how they could be addressed. And also public speakers at the meeting, and I know that's a huge challenge coming from over here, but the commission listens, they do listen, and you know, if you get a good turnout, they'll, you know, even more so, and make every effort to try and address those concerns. And just to point out that the difference between, for the Midcoast Council, you have this extra opportunity where there's a system that's been set up where the county planners will send you early referrals on a project. And for a complicated project, you may get several of those as maybe it's revised, and so you have opportunities. At this point, you're just writing to the planner. And your hope is that he will get the applicant to adjust the project or to add conditions, so that when he writes the staff report for the decision maker, that will already be in there and your concerns will be addressed. That's your first shot at it. And that's the goal of commenting on the early reports. When you get to the point where there's a environmental review document and you know the public hearing's coming up, you know the staff report's going to be written, and if if it's you may not know what that staff report's going to say. You may not have had a back and forth with the planner and have a sense of it, whether he's going to incorporate your requests or not, in which case you'd have to wait to see the staff report. If you've had several back and forths on a project, and you've seen an environmental review document and the arguments they're making in there, you have a pretty good sense of what that staff report's going to contain. At that point, your focus, if you want to have one last shot at it, your focus is to the Planning Commission to make sure they understand the current situation, that your comments are up to date, and they get them before the meeting. I think that's all I had to say.
So thank you, Lisa. If you'd stay up there. So, not coincidentally, one of the items on our agenda is something that will be coming before the Planning Commission. I think it's moved around, and what you're saying is, although not certain, you expect that to come to the commission in the first meeting in December.
I know for sure it's not going to be on the November 13th meeting.
Right.
And it's likely that the November 27th meeting will be canceled. They would have had it then, I believe.
So that would be right.
So that would push it to December 11. I
Oh.
can't guarantee that, but that's what Steve seemed to imply today at the...
So the point I want to raise is we should regard this discussion, which was very helpful, as a general purpose discussion, that is in the way of process. This isn't a time to ask questions that relate specifically to, let's say, an item that will come up later, but you may have some questions from what you said just about how that process works or what your expectations could be. So if anyone has questions.
Yeah, any
relate
questions
to
are
that.
welcome. We're just keeping it at a process level theoretical. We're not talking about any specific project here.
So I have a question. If something is at the level of the planner, and if you send it in when they're still receiving comments, do they have any responsibility, or do they at all respond to what an individual or the council sends in, or is that entirely up to them in terms of what they receive?
I've seen the whole range, from MCC comments being lost to a very constructive back and forth with certain planners that are open to that, where they discuss the issues. I remember about the wedding building at the harbor. This has all been approved, so it's okay to talk about this. Where I had questions about the number of visitor parking spaces, and she came out, counted, and said, "You're right, they need to have more." And there was a question about the height, and that all got resolved before the staff report. So then at that point, there were no objections.
And as far as submissions to the commission go directly, that's incorporated into a write-up they receive by staff, but anyone who sent something in doesn't know how that plays in the process until the report comes.
There's two ways that your written comments could come into play in the staff report. say, if you've just written one letter on the project and the planner acknowledges that you wrote that letter and maybe attaches it to the staff report and then explains why, what they've done to address your concerns or why your concerns aren't relevant or whatever, and that way, okay, it's in the staff report. Sometimes the staff report says the MCC had no comment, when actually you did. Other times, if it's complicated and there's been, it's taken a long time to reach this point, there may have been several letters from the MCC, and I would think that at best, your most recent letter might be in there, but maybe not. I mean, I wouldn't count on it. If it gets to the point where you still have serious concerns about a project and it's coming to the decision maker, as a commissioner, I can say it's very valuable to have that one concise summing up of your current position directly written to the Planning Commission, not depending on the staff report.
So at the Planning Commission meeting itself, if the MCC itself wanted to have comment as opposed to an individual, that would need to be something that we discussed or reviewed or approved as comment.
So generally, when someone goes to the Planning Commission and speaks for the MCC, they're speaking to the letter that was approved by the council.
Now, but any individual who wrote a letter, member of the public especially, is free to go to that meeting and to speak to the points that they have raised at the meeting. Is that correct?
Anybody, any member of the public can write a letter to the Planning Commission and/or speak at the Planning Commission. And in fact, if anybody wanted to appeal the project, they would need to have done that. It establishes a standard.
And by appeal, you mean if something was appealable to the Coastal Commission?
Or if you had the money, you wanted to appeal it to the Board of Supervisors.
If they wanted to speak to the commission, would they need to have spoken to the commission, to the Coastal Commission? If they wanted to speak there, would they need to have first spoken at the Planning Commission meeting?
You don't need to speak. You need to either write or speak, one or the other. So you're on the record as commenting on that project as an individual.
So if you as an individual sent a letter to the Planning Commission on an item, and then ultimately you wanted to go to the Coastal Commission, you could do that.
Yeah, and I think that basically, I've never appealed anything to the Coastal Commission, but I think, I don't know if it's required, but it's probably a good idea if your comments to the county decision maker lay out what you're going to appeal on, the basis of your appeal. I mean, in other words, if you bring up something in your appeal that you've never brought to the county, that might not work.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Yes.
Just that last, that last question. You said that you asked if it would be helpful if they had sent something to the Planning Commission if they were going to appeal to a coastal commission. But what if you had sent a letter to the planner? Would you still let that count, or do you always have to go off with?
I would, maybe, but for sure, if you comment to the decision maker, that'll do it.
Okay, and I wanted to clarify, the Planning Commission makes the decision on approving the project.
Yes.
And then the Board of Supervisors, what's their role?
Only if it gets appealed to them.
Oh, and you said that costs money.
Yeah.
What kind of money?
Oh, more than 500, maybe less than 1,000. The reason it's free to appeal to the Coastal Commission is they have a rule that if it costs money at your local, to appeal to your local government, then they won't charge. And that's the case here. County charges, and so an appeal to the Coastal Commission doesn't cost.
How does the county charge?
They cover their, they fund the planning department. The current planning department is funded by fees and things like that, so if you appeal, that's costing the county money. And they're just trying to, it's about the budget, I guess.
So this means that, so the Board of Supervisors doesn't actually decide unless somebody appeals.
Right. But to go back, just to review what I said, the Planning Commission has advisory when there's a comprehensive transportation management plan to be adopted, or an LCP amendment, that's a Board of Supervisors decision directly. I mean, that's not the planning, there'll be a workshop or a hearing at the Planning Commission, but we'll only just sort of recommend. And maybe say, oh, we think you should tweak this or that, but it's when the board gets it, they do whatever they want. So it's only the specific projects that the Planning Commission is the decision maker.
Okay. Go ahead, yes?
You said there are 5 planning commissioners?
5.
So you're the only one from the coast.
Each supervisor appoints a planning commissioner for their district. And Supervisor Horsley is the District 3, so I'm the planning commissioner for District 3. And we're the District 3, the whole coast, plus some of the Bayside.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Okay, we have one item on the consent agenda, approving the minutes for the 10/16 meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second? Okay. Any question? All those in favor of approving? Passes 6-0. Okay. We're moving ahead now to our regular agenda. The first item on the agenda is going to be Midcoast Neighborhood Commercial Development Standards and Design Review. We'll have a speaker on that. Again, if you have questions on it, do fill out a speaker slip. And when you speak, you have a 3-minute time limit to make your comments. Go ahead.
So we are co-chairing the CDRC subcommittee. I'm Beverly Garrity.
I'm Katie Costier. I'm an architect member for the Coastside Design Review Committee.
This is a subcommittee issue that we are addressing. It's a subcommittee that was formed to update the design review docs and associated docs that may thread or tie into that. On the CDRC itself, I am the Montero rep and ex-chair. We sent a letter to the Midcoast Community Council. Was everybody able to see it and read it? See it, yes, read it?
Seen it?
Yes, excellent, okay. For the benefit of all, I would just like to cover the letter itself, not its attachments. I'll refer to them. They are linked to on-site at the MCC website. So what we are asking on the agenda item is consideration of this MCC draft letter to the county renewing support for an updated ordinance specific to the Midcoast and for expanding the Coastal Design Review Committee's purview to include commercial-only development. Right now, we review residential development and commercial with a residential component. The desired outcome is for the MCC to approve the letter and to send it, hopefully. The letter is to Supervisor Don Horsley, and I'll go through it. As follows, the subject is the Midcoast Neighborhood Commercial Development Standards, CDRC purview, and building height method of measurement. And what we've tried to do in this letter is really zero in on the items that were most urgent to our effort. The MCC renews our 2017 request for an updated neighborhood commercial zoning ordinance specific for the Midcoast to be added to the county's long-range planning work plan. There is an attached MCC letter dated March 22nd, 2017. Again, please refer to that on site. And the purpose of attaching these letters is to show you the history of an overall effort to get these very important points into the regulations for all new construction, for all structures that are being impacted on the coast.
So that first point specifically is sort of to emphasize the fact that this was important 2.5 years ago, and it's something that the MCC did contact Supervisor Horsley about, and we want to renew that request
to reiterate the importance of it, and it's an effort that we've been continuing to work on, so we're hoping to have that voice be a little bit louder the second time around.
Third, and maybe even third time.
Hopefully second.
So, well, this might be the third.
Okay.
All right, so MCC appreciates and supports the efforts of the Coastal Design Review Committee, CDRC, in their monthly open study sessions. So we have a status attachment also that updates Supervisor Horsley on what it is we've been doing. And again, that's on the MCC website. MCC agrees with CDRC's prioritization of updated development standards specific for the Midcoast that are the critical underpinnings for design standards which are limited to refining the aesthetics of a project. That's these documents that we currently use. This is the commercial one with residential. It's extremely old, outdated, and actually doesn't do the job, not even close. This one, a lot more effort was put into this one. With our changing neighborhoods, Montero, Moss Beach, El Granada, Miramar, Princeton, and their unique identities and current building styles and requests, this one needs to be updated too. Not as badly as this one.
This is also very important in our efforts as we discuss the expanded purview for the Coastside Design Review Committee to be reviewing commercial projects. Because if these documents are being rewritten, whether or not we have purview will inform how this new document would be structured and how we would be able to apply it as a committee when we do our reviews.
So right now, this is commercial with a residential component. And Katie's addressing a current issue on the coast side where there's a lot of commercial development. The mini hotels, the RV parks, the cannabis industry, people just expanding their existing commercial enterprises and structures. This document, if it's impacted and it's still just commercial with residential only, would be kind of a different animal than if it were commercial with residential component or commercial without. MCC has provided agenda items to increase public outreach on this issue and a page on the MCC website with background and project study materials. And we draw a link to that. The MCC supports expanding CDRC purview to mid-coast commercial development. What currently exists is something called a C1 district, but it's not just the mid-coast. And we have our particular issues that we would like to focus in on. Hence, we'd like to actually establish a C1 mid-coast district and put all of our design descriptions in that category instead of trying to just change the language of the C1 that applies to the entire San Mateo County. So that's what this is referring to. Commercial, so what we're saying is CDRC purview to mid-coast commercial development, which typically has a larger footprint massing and higher visibility than residential projects. Existing regulations only provides for CDRC review of commercial development if it includes a residential component. This arbitrary distinction ignores the obvious that the residential component does not usually affect the exterior design of the building. Developers can easily avoid the CDRC public process and increased setback requirements by calling the residential component something else, like staff office break room, which has all the components of a one-bedroom manager apartment. It makes sense to provide this type of employee housing on site, but current regulations discourage it. MCC renews our 2017 request to expedite clarification of how building height is measured in the C1, S3, RM, CZ, and PAD zoning districts in the Midcoast LCP update area. And that letter was November 17th, originally presented to Don Horsley. So we just would like to get that building height issue taken care of and fast-tracked, and we feel that all these issues would have more momentum with MCC behind them as well as the DRC.
And big picture, I kind of want to summarize a little bit. That's sort of the meat and potatoes of the letter. But overall, we've been working on this effort for about 2 years as community members who are also members of the CDRC. So we're participating in this because we do feel that it's very important. The coast side has its own sort of vibe and feel, and that's one of the things everybody loves so much about it. That's one of the reasons that we feel that a dedicated C1 Midcoast is appropriate, so that it's being evaluated and treated in ways that we feel are relevant to the development on the Midcoast, rather than commercial development across the whole county. This is a very different animal. Over here, we're in a scenic corridor. You know, we've got a lot of natural habitats to protect, and the early neighborhood development guidelines going back to the 70s have a lot of information about wanting commercial development to have a residential feel to it. We want to make sure that the attention is being given to commercial projects the same way that it is to residential projects, especially since they have a lot more visibility than the residential projects do. And as we've stated in the letter, the zoning regulations have different requirements right now if the project has a residential component in it or if it does not. And so 2 of these items on the list that we're asking for support from the MCC are items that you've been voicing for years. And we're hoping that with our combined voices, that that's going to be better received and heard a little bit more loudly. And so that would be specifically clarifying that height regulation for the C1 that currently exists. And that's something that we're hoping we can accomplish immediately and not have to be waiting on all of these other efforts that we're working on. And then the new C1 Midcoast that has also been voiced as a priority, we'd like to have that added to the long-range plan. And it's currently not in the long-range plan for the planning department and for the county. So in order for us to have them help prioritize some of their resources and give us the support that we need in order to have our work pay off, we really need the support of the community and also of the MCC, so that they're not just hearing it from us and that they understand that we have been having positive feedback from our workshops, from the public, that people on all ends of the spectrum, from developers, builders, to community members, and architects, realtors, have all been giving us the same feedback, that they feel very positively about the suggestions that we're making, and they originally are showing up to these meetings with concern when they hear that we're looking at changing commercial development, and then when they hear the collaboration and the work that we're putting into it, and the thought, and what we're trying to accomplish, we've had, you know, all around nothing but support from the community. And so what we need is for Supervisor Horsley's office to hear that from MCC and from the community. So this is when we're really asking for everybody to voice their support and help in backing us in this, to make sure that they make it a priority in their long-range plan, but also giving us the support for getting the early adoption of the C1 height clarification, and working on this Midcoast commercial zoning district. Those are really important.
So what happens if this doesn't happen? I think it's important to take a look at that. I think it goes on for several more years, or maybe it just gets buried completely. County is really overworked. Long-range planning in county is really overworked right now, and it would be very easy for county to just bypass this once again.
Okay. So at this point, what we'll do, the council will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification. We'll go around. Once we finish that, take in comments from the community, and then we'll come back to discuss this. Okay. So starting, I guess, on my right, Barbara, do you have any questions?
The only clarifying question I have is, did we ever get a response from the letters we sent in 2017?
The answer was they don't have the resources to do it.
So does that mean, well, can you tell
Well, I support everything that you want, again, and try again.
Okay, thanks. Dave?
No clarifying question.
Oh, that's not.
So,
But-
in response to the resources, objection from the county, what we're proposing is that instead of the usual, county does all the work on this and the research and the report writing and the document edits, and then comes to the coast side, and then there's a grassroots response. We'd like to take a different approach. We'd like to have it be a grassroots, inspired process. We would like to do all the legwork for all the documents that they would need to put in their pipeline. And we'd like to focus on the priorities. So we are not okay with, we don't have the resources right now.
So, to make it specific then, because height was number one on your list. So is the action tonight intended to bring that to a close, or merely say that you'll get an okay to submit all the formal things that you need as documents to support that?
We'd like to get Don Horsley's support, which is critical to then meet with Steve Monowitz and Joe Leclerc. Steve Monowitz, Director of Planning Building, and Joe Leclerc, Director of Long Range Planning, to say,
Okay,
let's move forward with height, building height. We actually have two items, and the C1 Midcoast District
okay.
establishment.
Michelle, sorry, anything?
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are doing, and I fully support it. My only question in this letter is, in the section about building height, we're asking to clarify how building height is measured. But I don't think that's all we want. We want it
We want to
specifically.
specify.
Yeah.
We have it specified. Which letter are you referring to?
Tonight's
Letter that was
letter.
drafted for support.
March?
Last paragraph.
Or,
Tonight's letter, last paragraph.
take a look at the reference.
I did. I just
Okay.
wonder if we want to actually specify in tonight's letter, not just to clarify, expedite clarification of how building height is measured, but we would like
To expedite the changes.
expedite the changes we've outlined in the previous letter, something
Yes.
like
I
that.
think that's a great suggestion, because I think that that's more direct wording.
May I ask, what did you want to change it to? What you're saying, if I'm correct?
Instead of expediting the clarification, we want to expedite
Include it.
the changing.
The clarification that we're asking for is to add this sentence, because what
You see
happens
in the
is,
reference?
if when the county, okay, in the LCP update in 2012, the county lowered the height limit in those districts from 36 to 28 feet, but they did not define how height is measured.
Mhm.
And if it's not defined, the county defaults to their generic measurement, which is averaging, and it's much more liberal. And
Yeah.
so it's this clarification in particular, are you suggesting adding
It's,
that?
I guess just by reading that, when I read that paragraph in tonight's letter that said, MCC renews our 2017 request to expedite clarification of how building height is measured and go on, I just thought, oh, are we leaving it up to them to clarify?
No, we should probably say as specified in.
Change
the-
clarify to
As-
specify.
Yes.
As specified in
define.
the attached MCC letter.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
that's a great
so I would make it
suggestion.
a move to amend the letter.
yeah. And how would you like it
Can
amended?
you read that to Dave?
I've
I
got
don't know
it.
if I can
You got
read
it?
your
It's just changing clarify to specify.
Okay,
Yeah, specify
Instead
how
of
building
expedite
height.
clarification, specify specification. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, that's one way to do it.
why don't, we want to get through the
Yeah,
public
we
comment
can
as well,
come back
so-
to it.
Yeah, let's come back.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I fully support the letter, and I agree with the comments that have been made so far, so hopefully this will garner the action that we're hoping for.
Great, thank you. Dan?
And I agree with tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Are there any comments, questions from the audience in this matter? Yes? Could you come up to the microphone?
Hi, my name is Jane. The question I have is that you mentioned the Pillar Point neighborhood, and that's a very beloved place because it's holding a lot of our history as a community, as a boating and fishing. Is the plan to renovate the whole thing and come up with a new look, or will it be one-on-one and then this is the driver for that?
We're not planning to do urban design on any particular area. We're planning to capture the nature of each of the neighborhoods. That's one of the directions we're taking this document in, and making sure that all neighborhoods don't have to look alike, that they maintain their character.
I would also like to say that if anything, I think our efforts would be giving more attention and opportunity for response, both from the design perspective, from architects reviewing the projects in a commercial capacity, but also that would give more visibility to the community to be able to voice their opinion as well. So when you have feelings about whether or not a project that's proposed is fitting into that history and the harbor feel, that would give everybody a better opportunity to evaluate that. Whereas right now, commercial development is literally not being reviewed by any architects or designers.
So how can we support the document and through the meetings or letters?
Yeah, we do have ongoing work sessions, and there's a county link on the county's website. There's a link for this this ordinance update in the Coastside Design Review Committee efforts. There's also a link on the MCC's website, and they are held midday, which I think is challenging for a lot of people, but we also would love to hear support, even just with letters of support. Any voice of the community is going to be added to the voice of the MCC and the CDRC, and I think that the louder we can speak, the more that they're going to value what we have to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, could you come up to the microphone and give me a speaker slip afterwards?
Yeah, I had, first of all, I was a little bit
Could
confused.
you please introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
sorry. JQ Oswine, Lost Beach. I was a little confused by that last go-around about the harbor, because I thought the harbor was in the CCR district, which is totally separate from what we're proposing for C1 Midcoast. Is that true?
Plan Princeton will cover the CCR. The C1 update that they're talking about is neighborhood commercial. Those districts are almost all on the east side of the highway, except for a little strip in Moss Beach along the west side. All the visitor serving commercial, or the CCR, is on the west side of the highway. It's a separate zoning ordinance. And that will be updated with Plan Princeton. Plan Princeton will be updating the industrial district and the CCR.
And the way that Princeton comes in again to the CDRC is through whatever residential might be there that comes through. So on the CDRC, there's a Princeton rep right now for residential. So the C1 Midcoast won't necessarily do anything. It's Plan Princeton, but it will, residential will be.
Yeah, and specifically the
So,
neighborhood
excuse me,
serving.
You brought up Plan Princeton. Is that now something that's becoming back to life, or?
That's what we hear, but we're not
I
really
didn't want
involved
to
in that
sidetrack it.
effort.
I just want to understand where that's at.
Good question, Mark.
Steve Monowitz, Community Development Director, said Plan Princeton is hot on the heels of Connect the Coastside. Those are his words. So we're going to see Connect the Coastside soon, and then soon after that, we'll see Plan Princeton
Okay.
rise from the.
Thank you. Okay, yes.
I had more.
You had another question? Okay, come on then.
One of the things I recall from some of the earlier documents about the purpose of C1 Midcoast and all that was that it would be specifically for resident serving commercial use. I don't see that language anywhere in the letter. Is that left out on purpose, or is there a reason why it's not saying that?
No.
Is there a distinction?
That would be extremely hard to put into a planning ordinance. That would be a
That was in
taking.
the purpose?
That would be a taking.
It's in the documents, you're absolutely right. In the documents that we are editing and adding to, we are introducing this concept of resident serving versus visitor serving commercial. And so we have added a purposes section where there wasn't any before
Because it was the entire C1 for the whole county. So yeah, that's correct.
So-
We are intending for this C1 to be resident serving and community serving. And a large part of the importance for that direction is that we hear from the communities over and over again that people feel trapped in their homes on weekends and that the traffic is so bad and that they can't even get to Half Moon Bay. So by trying to work on a C1 Midcoast district, we're trying to also have that effort bring the conversation up with the community on what types of development would be helpful in serving the neighborhoods. And then that information is going to be communicated to all the developers and the builders as well. And I think that if we can get more feedback from the community on the types of commercial development that would be successful, then we're more likely to see that kind of development happen. And then we're gonna have more neighborhood markets like Spangler's and places where you can go and you're seeing your neighbors and you're not having to fight the traffic and go to Pacifica or go to downtown Half Moon Bay to have your basic needs served.
So at this point, that's on the next layer of detail that we don't feel, maybe erroneously, we don't feel needs to be in this particular letter.
It sounds like there's some political sensitivity to it.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you would ever get an ordinance specifying it. You can have it as a goal, but you
As a
can't write it
purpose.
into an ordinance.
It's a purpose, not an action. Yeah.
I think, can I
Yeah.
just, basically this,
I gave it away.
what, oh, the three attachments to this letter, I was on the council when those 2017 letters were written. I actually drafted those letters, that's 2 years ago. But basically, they cover the concern about the C1. There is no purposes section. It's just critical. All the development standards are to support the purposes. If you don't have any purposes, what have you got? I mean, you look at, for example, other development in the CCR, like RV park or something, they refer back to the purposes of that ordinance. And does this project serve those purposes? Well, in neighborhood commercial districts, we don't even have any purposes to refer to. It's like, whatever, build whatever. And it does, right. So that's important, and these details are explained in the MCC letters that were written 2 years ago that were supported by the council then, and I hope that this is another opportunity to get word out to people about neighborhood commercial, this concept, because it's kind of hard to, it's not a shiny object, you know, but this is important. If we lose our neighborhood, they're small districts, and they are currently way more residential in the commercial than in those districts, and if we lose the rest of it, then we are forever condemned to be bedroom communities with nothing to serve the residents here locally. So it is important.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'm going to close public comment. And I'm sorry, didn't see a...
I'm not missing the last of the World Series game without having a chance to comment on something. So I've gone to a few of the Coastal Design Review Committee meetings. I'm a famous non-public meeting goer because I just get tremendously frustrated about the amount of work that goes on at this level and never comes to anything. And as an example of that, Lisa's excellent letter of March 22nd, 2017, and the many ways the county has of blowing these things off. We don't have the assets to handle this, But when you look at all of the things they do have the assets to handle, it's kind of a head scratcher, They pick and choose. So I came to a couple of these meetings after getting a notice. I think Lisa might have sent me an email or something like that, and showed up. And from the first meeting, I liked where this is going, and the whole purposes section. The thing that catches me is that they are trying to alter the current things into this new coastal commercial zone. And it's been done before in North Fair Oaks and other places. So this is not something that we're coming up with out of the blue. This is something the county can swallow if they have the political will to do it. The purposes get stated, but in the meetings, if you come to some of these meetings, you will find that as we go down in the levels in this meeting, a lot of specifics get brought up. Building height is an obvious one, and I think if you reflect on the reaction of the people of Montera, for example, to the, what was it, 36-room or whatever hotel that was proposed there with its large height and so forth, you know, that got folks up in arms. And what's good about this whole thing is it's oriented towards the neighborhoods, but not just the neighborhoods, to the little towns that we've got. And that's the whole driving cause here, is to have our commercially zoned areas serve our localities. And by sitting on this, of course, it gets worse and worse and worse as to the needs for something like this as we get more and more trapped by past county policies that are just encouraging as many people to come in and overload the infrastructure and everything else here, and to make local residents suffer for this. So it goes on and on besides building height. They're talking.
Wrap it up.
Okay, yeah. But it gets into, because this is relevant, it gets into setbacks from the street. It gets into possible spacings between commercial buildings. It gets into maybe height jumps from the street so that these buildings aren't so imposing. Anything that fits more the character of the given community is. So I want to encourage the MCC to support this process that's going on and to follow it in the future.
So this is 1 extra minute in honor of missing the baseball game.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. Then I'm going to close the public comment. I need a motion to accept the letter.
I'll make a
As
motion, we
amended, though?
accept the letter.
We didn't define the amendment. Do you
No,
want to
no,
read?
well, we need the letter first.
Oh, sorry.
We want the overall motion first.
Yeah, okay, now, okay.
I'm sorry, so who moved and who seconded?
I
It
moved.
was back and forth, I didn't catch who was first.
Barbara moved.
I'll second.
Tamara second. Okay? Okay, now, there's amendments people want to put forward. Michelle?
Yeah, I'll move to amend the letter. I think Dave maybe can read the amendment.
I'll read what Michelle handed me. It changes only the parenthetical section to, rather than see attached, 11.817, it says as specified in 11.817.
Well, just put the comma after that first. It's basically the entire paragraph would read, MCC renews our 2017 request to expedite clarification of how building height is measured, comma, as specified in the attached 11.817 MCC letter.
Okay, I did not get that that's what you were trying to do. Okay,
Got it?
yeah.
Okay. Are there any
Did the
other?
rest of the council get what the amendment was? So let me just read it as I now believe it is. MCC renews our 2017 request to expedite clarification of how building height is measured as specified in the 11.817 MCC letter in the C1 blah, 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 blah.
Okay. I have a process question in terms of the big picture. So what you're looking in this is continuing support to the supervisor to move ahead. At some point, I'm then assuming that you'll come to us for support with something that goes to the planning commission, which is actually getting it done.
We actually don't go, this is not a project that goes to the planning commission like a building does. We
Okay.
have a lot of work to do before
Well-
then. So this,
I'm trying to understand where the.
I'm gonna tell you, this letter will go to Don Horsley. We will be meeting with Don
Understand.
Horsley. Then we hope to meet with, there was one meeting that Camille Leon, senior planner, who works with us, had with Steve and Joe Leclerc, and there will be subsequent updates. They've requested these updates, so we will then be attending those meetings. So we'll be moving this along until it gets into the official pipeline, and then we will inform you of what that process will be.
But does that process ultimately wind up with something the planning commission, or is it the board of supervisors who approves this?
The process
It's Board of
ultimately.
Supervisors and then Coastal Commission.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's the Board of Supervisors and then the Coastal Commission.
And the
Okay.
Coastal Commission approval is an LCP update.
So, having heard from Carl both support for the project, it's still a long pathway, is what you're saying.
Our
This is a
ti-
step along.
Our timeline is a minimum of 3 years, probably 5.
Well, we've already put in 2, so.
So like if you really track or origination to adoption, that's
Well,
the timeline.
It's good to have it on the record for some people were here before and know the continuity
Exactly.
and others don't, so
The other
thank
thing
you.
I think that is important that was voiced in that letter was asking them to add this effort specifically to the long-range planning efforts of the planning department, because they're saying they don't have the resources. These other projects are in their long-range plan. We want to be added to that plan so that they can't keep putting it on the back burner.
Okay, so, sounds like then you'll have updates along the way, like we met with them, okay. So, any other questions before we vote?
So the next
Hold on.
update will be,
Lisa?
will, to just close that circle, is we'll be finding out what that process is that they
Yeah.
are overburdened with, so that we can take some of them off.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would encourage, in addition to this letter, that the MCC stay involved with the CDRC committee, even if one of you were interested to attend those study sessions monthly and report back, and a close collaboration on this. It's important for the whole coast
I
side.
agree with that, that the concern of what this is highlighted, so this is basically
When you
design
ask
review
about-
committee, let me finish, design review. We've already said, coming down this pipeline, we have Connect the Coast Side, which is, it's something of a never-ending story, but they vow that they're coming forward. So then after that is Plan Princeton. From the standpoint of our council, the issue we have to deal with, not tonight, but basically, we need some framework that keeps at least some subset of the members informed, because you get into some serious weeds, and also participation from the public where they want to be more informed, because it's very hard to start it from zero each time. So, just general comment. Any other?
Can I?
Yes?
It's important for the council and the public to provide input to this process. They're looking for.
That's what I'm dealing with.
It's not just getting reports.
I
It
understand
needs to
that.
go.
That's what I was just saying.
Thank you.
But we're not going to get too far into that tonight, but it's looking.
No.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote?
We still have the amendment on the
Oh,
table.
the amendment. You've read it? Okay, all in
I
favor of
read
the
it.
amendment?
Well, wait, we don't have a second yet.
No second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? 6-0. Any further comment before we vote on the motion to adopt, to accept the letter? All those in favor? All those okay, 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to working with you.
Excellent.
Okay. So next, we have comments on the neg deck for the Harbor Village RV Park. We have Michelle and Dan attached to this. Who is going to lead off the item? We have the letter before us.
Okay. It's not really commenting on the neg deck. The neg deck is, the review period is passed.
No,
So-
not for the MCC.
So this is basically a letter that will, what I wanted to say on this is this has to now go to the planning commission. We passed the deadline for the planner.
No, there is no deadline for the MCC.
So it's addressed-
This has been addressed over and over and over again. The MCC has the right to comment past the normal comment.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this should be directed to the planning commission,
As
copy
well
to
as the
planner.
planner, yeah.
So I think the order should be reversed.
I'm open to any order. Like I said, I got the letter with no header.
No, I'm just saying, the planner has basically, we passed his deadline, we can still submit it, but the important thing coming up
Well,
next, let me
they're
finish.
saying-
The important thing coming up next is the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we put that aside? I think it's, not that important. It's clearly the, is Lisa still here? It actually is the second time that I've heard that the MCC can, comment after the date. So it seems to me appropriate to address it to the planner, NCC, the
Well,
planning
a
commission.
minimum to both, but I agree that we're making comments
Okay,
on
good.
it. Go ahead.
So, yeah, the RV park is, as most everybody in the room knows, is continuing to move forward. And as Lisa said tonight,
I think Lisa's basically gone because she doesn't want to be part of this discussion.
the staff and the developer seem to have much more, far greater control than the community that will have to look at this and live with it for the rest of the time that we stay here in this area. I'm fundamentally not happy with that, but apparently that's the way it is. So it's a 50-space RV park at the corner of Capistrano Road and Highway 1, in between the hotel and Highway 1. Personally, I'm not interested in the project at all, but if it has to be, I would think it's very important to preserve quite a bit of the buffer between Capistrano Road and the RV lot. I remember when we used to walk in that area and go to chili cook-offs. I remember when all of the trucks and boat trailers and salmon season would fill up that whole area. I remember big circus tents in there. It's really sad for me to see it to be completely consumed, or proposed to be completely consumed. So we have a draft letter tonight. I think it's very important that a good survey of the community's concern on the project is clearly addressed. I think it's a pretty well-written letter. Michelle, myself, and Claire finalized it last night. I don't think I should go through the letter, but hopefully everybody has read it. Michelle, did you want to?
Did you want to highlight like the main points that we're trying to make, just a high-level overview?
Okay.
Or I could do that.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of opposition, and I think the focus is on the fact that the Harbor Gateway, this is the first view that people would see when they arrive to Pillow Point Harbor. And it's special. It's special that for years it's been open and it's had that small town feel. We have the large hotel and the large restaurant there now. But there's just that little spot left that is open and, you see cranes in there. Downsized, but still beautiful and still important. The traffic impacts, I think, will be incredible. Slow-moving RVs, up and over the hills, through the curves, are gonna greatly impact the extra RVs coming, will add to and impact, just the regular commutes, people moving in and out from the area. In addition, specifically that intersection, which I travel through a lot, talking about Harbor, Pillar Point Harbor Boulevard and Capistrano Road, the area where you would make a left turn and then go down into the harbor to catch Joanne's or such. That intersection, I've traveled it so many times, and it's because it's 3 lanes that come down into one, and there's so much interaction right now. It's just bearable, and it's borderline dangerous in a situation right now. To add these extra RVs turning in and out of the lot, entering the RV park, and of course, these RVs are going to be filled with people. And these people are going to walk back and forth from the harbor to the RV. They're going to bring bicycles, and they're going to ride bicycles back and forth. They're going to be crossing this intersection. The amount of activity at this intersection, I think, will be absurd and clearly problematic and dangerous. There's a big concern with the 28-day stay enforcement. Apparently, it's very difficult to enforce. I wish that we could look into that and change that, or call more attention to it, or demand that it's enforceable. But from leaders I've talked to, as it stands now, it's very difficult to enforce. I mean, it may come out to be the community to have to enforce it. Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, I just wanted to make another comment on that, because I do actually maybe want to amend this part of the letter. Yeah, around the 28-day stay. So I was doing some background research, and I found a letter from 2009 in the Half Moon Bay Review, 10 years old, but still I think very relevant, about how the owner of the Pillar Point RV Park had sought to increase the stay of within the RV park from 4 weeks to 90 days, and got pretty instant pushback, and decided to pull that motion. But there was a quote in that article from someone saying that they had lived in that RV park for 5 years before being asked to move. So I actually do want to amend this letter, just putting this out there now. I won't make a motion quite yet, but to state something around how the owner has the developer has a history of allowing stays longer than 28 days at other RV parks that he owns.
5 years, huh?
Yeah.
So it's important to note that if the 28-day stay is not easily enforceable, what would stop 50 RV lot, 50 space RV, what would stop 50% of that become permanent housing? And then what would stop people that are living in these RVs having extra cars? And then what would stop these extra cars being parked in front of our homes in our neighborhoods? Should I say the Clement?
No, you might as well just hit your point. So basically, you have concern for it becoming a permanent living place that you want to express. You have concerns that there's not enough parking for the cars associated with the RVs? Or the two particulars you're bringing out there?
Well, yes.
Okay, that's fine.
They don't give them 4 parking spaces for the RV, and if people are living in there, there's no way to police that. So the odds are very high that there'll be 4 cars per RV.
There are
Well,
only
or-
8 parking spaces for non-RVs in the entire
For
lot.
the total, right.
Yeah.
Since this, the climate pollution part, I'll let you, I'm gonna skip over that right now and talk
Oh, I can
about
just
the.
speak
Let's
here
just go and see,
quickly.
so do you have something on climate? Ms. Lewis?
Yeah. So, in the neg deck, it stated that there was, I think, I'm not saying the exact words right, but very little impact, in terms of climate. And one of the things that they stated was that they thought that all the RVs that would travel to this lot would be going along Highway 1 anyway, and just decide to pull over because they saw an RV park. I disagree with that. I think that people travel to destinations typically. They don't just drive along and decide to stop spur of the moment. So I did want to disagree with that statement that was made in the neg deck. Also, obviously that is going to cause pollution in terms of greenhouse gas emissions with these large RVs. And then I wanted to state about the 35,000 square feet of impervious surface that will be poured there. And the fact that during a study, they did find some evidence of native species, including a nesting migratory bird. There's also concern that there could be other native species that they didn't actually find, but that could potentially live in that area. So I just completely dispute the fact that the statement that is made in the neg deck that it would be a very minuscule impact, basically, to climate.
Got it? Okay.
And talk about planning in general, planning for an RV in that RV lot in that location. It really seems to be counterintuitive that a property owner would want to degrade the entrance to his high-end hotel. And looking out of the restaurant windows,
Okay.
filling up. So it just doesn't, it just doesn't make sense. There's something
Well, it's-
fishy about the project to me. Let me just finish here.
Sure. Go ahead.
So, as I said earlier, instead a plan with a better first image would really help, not only the hotel and the restaurant, but all of the businesses in the area, all of the visitors' experiences. And I really think that having a arbitrarily the whole stretch along Capistrano Road pushed back, left open, say 150, 200 feet, could over the years, could be used as, during holiday season, there could be, maybe decorations, maybe families can come out and decorate it, a lot like they have down in San Jose, a little bit smaller scale, of course. San Jose, they have the lights in the park, some kind of a family event could be decorated through the fall season as well. There could be food festivals. But one of the biggest things is we have really strong need for overflow parking for the big special events. The triathlon, the half marathon, the Mavericks, and there's going to be more events, obviously, coming up in the future that we don't even know about now, that are going to really attract a lot of people, and they need a place to park other than on the side of the highway. By the way, that's where a lot of the salmon truck, boat trailers are being parked now. So, in conclusion, based on our known community opposition, the MCC requests that the project be modified and reduced or not approved at all. LCP policy 11.4 requires that the facility not subvert the unique small town character of the nearby community. This prime visible gateway location to the only recreation and working fishing harbor in the county does not support, quote, other compatible use, end quote. listed in the CCR zoning district. For the CCR section 62697, development must be sited in a manner that maximizes public views. So,
Okay, thank you,
any
Dan.
comments?
So first, we're going to take
Michelle,
any,
are you-
no, Dan?
I'm
going
good.
to take clarification questions from the council. Start with Tamar in between the two of you.
I don't think I have any questions necessarily, maybe just comments, but if we're just.
Yeah, we'll get comments later,
I don't
right?
think I have any questions at this time.
Okay. Dave?
No clarifying questions?
Barb?
Did, I wasn't at the last meeting that we had. Did you send out the draft?
The previous council sent out a draft letter, yes.
Last week?
Yes.
Okay. So this is on top of that
That's
letter?
right.
Okay. That's all.
Okay. Okay, I have 2 speaker slips from the audience on this subject. Are there any other people who want to speak on this? Okay, so first I'd like Lenny Schultz.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lenny Schultz, El Granada resident. I wish I could thank you. First, I want to thank you for your work. I know you work so hard. And I wish that I could say that, hey, good idea. But this, I'm strongly opposed to another RV park in this tiny community. I think I'm a bit late making these comments, but your letter's already going in.
No, this
But
is.
I will write a letter.
Excuse me, just to clarify, we wrote a letter that went to the planner with a copy of the commission at our last meeting. This is a new letter. It's
Yes.
going to the same parties again, so.
She's referring to.
But you
her
already
own-
approved this letter, but I'll just write another letter and go to the planning commission meeting and all that.
Okay.
Do all that stuff. We can appeal it to the coastal commission, right?
Well, we didn't approve this letter yet.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not that I have anything really earth-shaking and new, but it took me a lot to get here. This idea of this makes me almost physically ill. To denigrate that area, it's just my opinion, you know. A lot of people may find an RV beautiful, but I believe it'll undoubtedly further the negative impacts of that area aesthetically of our harbor. Especially in its proposed location, you know, right in our face as we turn into the harbor. And in the public's face when they come in. I definitely do not think that that's feasible for those big things to be turning in at Capistrano or anything like that. I can't believe that they have the idea that is that where they think they're gonna turn in at Capistrano? Or-
Turn in from Highway 1, Capistrano, and turn on into the.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I'm worried because the present RV lot, which is, you know, the owner of the present RV lot has the history. Too bad that doesn't carry much weight, but a history of LCP violations galore. I live right across the street from it, so I get to see all these violations, and I just need to live my life sometimes instead of constantly bringing all these things up. It's really a downer. Anyway, the record shows that we have ongoing issues with the existing RV lot, lighting, LCP violations, residential stays. I'm one of the people who used to take the pictures of the RVs in the existing lot and bring it to the Half Moon Bay City Council and say, hey, you better enforce this. It's not residentially zoned. It's, you know, and I did that work, you know. That was a lot, and now I'm afraid this might happen again. I'm really, especially with the pressure for housing that we have. Do you think that they're gonna manage that one tightly so that visitors can go there? I doubt it. Anyway, that's just a dream that it might be managed properly. Sorry, I've taken so much time. The first thing that came to my mind, has anybody ever been to Trinidad? They made this mistake. You go into Trinidad, this gorgeous spot, it's like heaven, and then you see this RV thing plopped right in the middle of it, of this little heavenly gem. And it just
We
is
are
a,
trying to hold to our 3-minute limit.
yeah, okay, it's just a blight. And I'm sorry this is happening. I really wish that it wasn't, but anyway, I didn't finish all this, but thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Jane? What do you-
Grace Silver from El Granada. Thank you for writing the letter. It seems like you've covered quite a bit. And thank you. I felt the emotion of the community that we're very disappointed about this. I wrote a letter to you with my thoughts in it, specifically about the RV park, but I wanted to bring up a different issue, a related issue on this. There are two projects going on. One of them is this one, and one of them is the Burnham Strip development of a park. And I think that there's going to be some potential problems with how that one project amplifies the other. So the meeting, I'm speaking a little bit before time
We'd
because...
like you to stay on this particular item because we're voting on it as an action. So if you make it sounds like you want to talk about another project.
Well, can I just dovetail it to what Dan said?
Quickly.
Okay, so the idea that people from the RV park would stay on one side of the street might not happen when we have amenities on the other. They may come in and want to park in the neighborhoods. So that was what I wanted to add.
Okay, so you're concerned that the RVs being parked there would then drive over and park in the
Well,
Burnham Strip area?
if there's barbecues, showers, bathrooms, and those kind of amenities that are planned in the Burnham Strip, that
Is
will
that-
be a draw for people living in RVs or trailers or whatever to come into the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any other, okay, yes, if you come up, give us your slip. No, Benny, there's somebody behind.
Hello, I'm Dolores Silva from West Beach, and I'm here representing Resistance Density. We wrote a letter. I hope you had a chance to read it. I know it's been posted on the MCC site. We did enter this letter in time for the negative declaration comments last week, and we hope to, we may write another letter when the whole proposal comes forward, but we really did very much, we are very much in line with what you're saying in your letter. We also got a little bit of advice from our attorney about certain existing cases that were found when in similar circumstances that they're pointing to negative declaration, that CEQA took objection to it or that it did not comply with CEQA. And we have several points in our letter that you can read. I won't take you through all of them, but it is, I do want to mention or stress that one of the points is that it's very important under CEQA that things be interpreted in a manner as to afford the fullest possible protection to the environment. I think environment is a word that you might consider adding to your or changing in your letter from climate, but environment is like the key word. One of the other cases we pointed to was that testimony from members of the community really do count. And so keep those letters coming. And this is, we'll see how this goes forward. I mean, we're asking that because there are significant points here that affect the environment, not just aesthetically, but in several ways, that we're asking that a full environmental impact study be done, because this is a very, very critical spot in our coastside, very important, very scenic, and it's a travesty to handle it as if nothing's going to impact anything. And so we definitely are very supportive of your letter. I hope you take some time to read ours, and we will stay united in opposing this because it does impact the enjoyment of our beautiful coast, and in particular that harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. want to say something else?
Yes, may I? Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot. I didn't forget, but I just ran out of time. Lenny from El Granada. I just wanted to say that policy 8.5 is being violated, I believe, because the visual resources component of the LCP, the location of development, requires that new development be located on a portion of a parcel where the development is least visible from state and county scenic roads and is least likely to significantly impact views from public viewpoints and is consistent with all other LCP requirements and best preserves the visual and open space qualities of the parcel overall. Where anyway, this 8.5 is really important here because they could, if the county does approve it, they should move it back and 50% of it should be cut off. It's way too big aesthetically too. Again, you know, it can't help anything. Has anybody ever seen an RV lot with 50, it's about as big as the one we have here, with 50 units that enhance the character of the area? I haven't, but you might have. If you have, let me know. But anyway, so that's that LCP policy. They just need to move it away if they insist upon having it, and have some kind of mechanism for checking in on the residential again component, because in the RV lot right now, I go out there all the time and people come, all the spots for public access, the 19 public access spaces are taken, every one of them sometimes. I can't park there and watch the moon over the water anymore because they're filled at night with all these people who are living there or who are staying there, the overflow. There's no public access. I did get a space the other night when the moon was full, and there was one. And so anyway, that's really important for the public to be able to go out there, you know, and park out there, the 19 spaces. That's coastal act policy. That's being violated, and the lighting, you know, is glaring out to the community. My house faces that RV lot, so, you know, I get to be reminded of all these things all the time, and it's like torture. I think I might actually move away. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I just want to comment that you can't use language too strong in objecting to a negative declaration on this. It's got light pollution, it's got coastal access issues, there's a major, traffic is recognized in the California Coastal Act as an excessive buildup of traffic is blocking a form of access to the coast side. That needs to be brought out very strongly. The existing, that Lenny's been looking at out of her windows, the existing RV park is in the city of Half Moon Bay, which has been a problem for those of us in the county area. And the violations there of environmental matters, the excessive growth of the trees that are screening that lot, that were never supposed to be the height and density that they are now, that nobody has done anything about. The parking area there for the public that Lenny mentioned, nobody does anything about that. And this has gone on for decades. We have a long record of lack of enforcement. And who's to say that there's going to be any more enforcement on this? And yet they're saying a negative declaration? I mean, come on, all of these issues need to be addressed in detail. And as far as climate goes, yeah, more vehicles coming down the coast and everything else that goes with supporting people and being in a place, you know, providing energy to that place and so forth and so on. There's endless environmental issues involved in this RV park, even if it wasn't there in any other place. And a neg deck just doesn't get it. That's just a way of trying to scoot it along without any objections.
Thank you, Carl. Any other comments? One more, please.
Thank you, Harold Herman is my name. So there are a couple of things that weren't addressed tonight. One point I want to raise is Big Wave, which was approved. 2015 hexagon traffic study basically outlines 1,500 daily car trips generated by Big Wave. So this has been approved. That's what's in the books. So that specific intersection gonna probably take half of that daily load. And then the other half might take Airport Boulevard and then basically enter and exit through Airport, Cypress, and then Highway 1. So that's something that should be considered as well. The second one is earlier this year, Streetlight Data published a research piece about the evacuation of cities, and a couple of cities on the coast side. Actually, it should be every city on the coast side. So we made a list of towns that will be difficult to evacuate. The result of that, and then we pair that up with the 2018 reclassification of fire risk on the coast side. So people are getting their homeowner insurance canceled because the insurance companies, they got burned the last 2 years after all the wildfires all over the news. But we are right in the middle of this. So the question becomes, and I'm an ex-RV owner, so I know how they are to navigate, even though I had just a 24-foot one. I assume the sites that are planned for, they go 30, 36 feet. So big RVs, they're very difficult to maneuver. And if you ever have the case of a major tsunami, fire, large fire, or earthquake, and you need to evacuate, you're going to face these RVs because they're also going to evacuate with everybody else. So that will be very difficult. So as I said, the study's out. We made the list. I think that's something to look at. And then the third one is, so back in my RV days, typically what you do is you reach a campground and you're full. So your wastewater tanks are full. So that's the first thing you do. You basically offload. We had the study from Resist Densities showed 101 sewer overflows on the coast side. Basically, when you look at the location, they're all over the coast side. Especially problematic when we have the winter storms. So the question becomes, as 28 days are not enforced and these become units, and you might think big RVs, you can live with 3-4 people in that unit, it becomes a permanent housing, and with that comes wastewater, sewer, etc. So that will add additional strain on our already failing sewer systems. So I just want to add these 3 points, so sewer, big wave, traffic, and then evacuation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Now open for discussion from the council of this item, but first I'd like a motion to accept this letter.
Move to accept the letter.
Second?
A second.
Move to second, okay. Let's see, well, Dan, let the discussion, so we'll start at the other end, Barb.
I like the points that Resist Densities brought up and Harold, but I like our letter as well, so I'm fine with it.
Dave?
I have some issues with the letter, so I'm going to offer an amendment. I can do that now, or I can wait.
Let's just get first round comments and go through. I also will have some comments, but they actually relate to the next step we could do after this letter, so I'll hold those. Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone who made a public comment. Yeah, as you can see, there are many, many issues. We didn't even get to all of them in this letter. We wanted to try to keep it somewhat succinct to try to hit the key points because we know, as Lisa even stated earlier on in this meeting, that the Planning Commission is not going to have a lot of time to really review the documents, and we want to make sure it's like really hard-hitting and that it gets to the key points. But yeah, I mean, I think they're all great issues. We even had a hard time keeping this to 2 pages. I'm definitely open if anyone else on the council thinks there's anything that they'd like to add. I still do want to offer that amendment on the 28-day stay. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, so thank you guys for putting this together. Really agree with all of the things and the sentiment on this issue. I have a couple of wording suggestions when it does open up for amendments about some of the sections.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's
Oh,
okay.
did you want to?
I have one more thing.
Sure. Sorry.
Kind of piggybacking on some of the last comments regarding evacuations and fire and things like that in light of all the recent and regular power outages. I feel like this is another added burden on limited resources in the community. So I don't know how, or if we even need to work that in, but that's just like another added thing to be thinking about pretty much permanently now.
Okay. Dan?
So after hearing the public's comment, I think there's a couple things that really should be included in this letter. And that is a clear ask for a full EIR report. We don't have that in our letter.
So what I count is there's at least.
Also, I'd like to include somehow some of the evacuation concern, because, I mean, that is really relevant.
So Dan, what you're saying, you have some specifics you want to offer as amendments to the letter, is that right?
What I'm telling you is that I would like to work with the council in a way that we can have that added. Now, if we want to, looks like we're already going into some editing, but, you know, I just want to, you know, is there anybody on the council right now that would be opposed to adding a clear ask for the EIR report, the full EIR report?
Yeah. What I want
I'd just like to know.
He's just asking for a consensus. I think that's fine.
Right. What I'm bringing up is, I think we have 3 or 4 people with some particulars to add here. The framework I wanted to put forward is an idea, so comment from me now. Okay? That basically.
You interrupted me.
No, I asked you if you were, I didn't want to go into amendments yet, just comments on it, because several people had amendments. And I wanted to do that in a whole.
Well, I'd still like to know council's position on adding an ask.
That's something you plan to add for, as an amendment, right?
I think he's asking, is there a consensus before he tries to draft the language?
Okay, the people in general
Is that,
support.
am I correct, Dan?
Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
How do people feel, just to give Dan a sense of supportive?
Yeah, I support that.
Okay, we're supportive.
Thank you.
Okay? The point I want to bring to the council now is there's 2 things to think about relative to the process. One is we have several things to offer that might, as amendments to this letter. And basically, we can do that in 2 ways. We can either look to conclude this letter today and work through those amendments, or catalog what those are and take those back to the author of it to bring back to our next meeting, which will occur before it goes to the commission. So that's not to say we can't look at the amendments, but the question is, there's a sense of the council we'd like to talk them through, or have them collected and then ask the authors of this letter to work them in and bring it back at our next meeting, which would be on November 13th.
I think we should try and amend that now, and only if we get stuck should we do this.
Okay, so we'll start that. The second point I want to bring up, and this is a way to basically some of the greatest strength of the reaction of the community as a whole, is both the volume and the quality of letters that are out there. And I think our real opportunity beyond what we write and approve as a council letter is to help organize that effort by the community. In particular, we've received many specific letters, and I think we as a council can organize an effort to go to those letter writers, point them out when the commission will meet, and that there's great value for them to come to the commission meeting and make their point there. Every citizen who comes gets to emphasize it. You could even sort of catalog those to a certain extent, so there's some organization, but the more people who say the more effective things, the better. And to a certain extent, that even speaks louder than our particular letter, but I think that's important too. That's something I plan to bring forward as a future agenda item. It doesn't bear at all on this, but it's sort of where I think we should go. But with that said, I think what the sense of the council is to try to make amendments to the letter now.
Yes.
So that we could approve it today, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Dave, you're the sort of editor-in-chief, if you will. Do you want to direct the process?
I can do that. I converted it to text this time so I can edit it more easily. Okay, so the amendment I want to offer is there's one large one and one small one. I want to drop the entire second to last paragraph headed planning. We're second guessing what the project owner is trying to do, and that just does not feel appropriate in a letter like this, to me.
So, now, would you like to take that individually to get a sense of it, or?
I know, I'll give them both, and then we can talk about them separately.
Okay.
And I don't care which order we talk about it. And then in the last paragraph, I would suggest changing known community opposition to just community opposition. I mean, if it's opposing, then it's known. I don't think saying no one adds anything, it's just sort of clumsy wording.
Okay.
Do you want to accumulate all the amendments and then talk about them?
I think it's
or-
better to take them one at a time, otherwise we get lost trying to track it. So
Okay.
you made two amendments. One was drop the planning section entirely, and the other is just have it community opposition, not community opposition. Okay? Do I have a motion to accept that?
I'll move it.
Well, moved. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded?
Well, I moved, so Michelle
Okay.
seconded.
Oh, I'll second.
That's right, you second, got it. Okay, any comments on these two particular items?
Yes.
Go ahead, Dan.
So, Dave, your amendment is to strike the complete paragraph under planning.
Yeah,
That was his motion.
that was the way I think it needs to go, yeah. Because it's very fuzzy where the rest is fairly concrete.
Well,
To me, that's the way.
I disagree with the, that it's fuzzy. Why it is so important is because it's gonna affect the community. I think it's very important that we owe the community to have that on record. The community is gonna have to.
The motion is to drop it. It doesn't speak to what the community feels about it.
Well, I think.
So basically, Dan, I would like to have the council vote on it. I understand you're not.
Can we have a little discussion, please?
No, I'm waiting for it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, is there anybody else that would like to come back with? Anybody else that, anything to say about that?
No?
I think there are some aspects to this paragraph that are good, like the last sentence about improving the feel of the harbor gateway. I think to Dave's point, I don't really feel like it's up to us to dictate the way specifically that the owner needs to use his land. I do think it's up to us to say, this use that he has proposed is not a fit for our community, but, we're kind of getting into like telling him how to run his business a little bit, and, I agree with the sentiment here that it seems to me like it's a bad decision to want to put an RV park in front of your high-end hotel and your restaurant, but I think that dollar signs are the only thing he really is thinking about, so I don't think that this argument really holds a lot of merit.
Okay, want to take a vote on the amendment?
Well, I think it highlights, a specific impact that the community will have.
I believe the way people are objecting to it is his primary reference is sort of telling the owner what he ought to think, and that seems like the wrong.
You know what, he's telling us what we have to accept.
No, you have expressed it as, why would he want to do this? But, okay. I think we,
Well,
I feel we discussed it
in the
enough.
spirit of time, if nobody else has a comment, then let's go ahead and
Okay.
vote.
All those in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 5-1. Okay, those are your amendments then?
That's it.
Barb, did you have any?
No.
Okay, Michelle?
Okay, I have 3. The first is just in the addressing of the letter. I do think what we mentioned at the beginning, that this actually should be to the planning commission, because they're the ones that are making the decision, and then we can copy the planner. I think We may want to also copy the coastal commission, since if this does get approved, we would then maybe want to move to appeal.
We
and I-
can't, we are not allowed to appeal.
We
Oh,
can't
we
appeal, but
can't.
we can comment.
But we can copy them on
You,
this letter.
individuals, if you go to the planning commission and speak as an individual.
Right, we're
then you can
right.
appeal, but we are
Got
a
it.
representative of the board of supervisors, so we
Makes
can't
sense.
appeal their decisions.
Okay, do you think it would be appropriate to copy them on this letter?
We can.
I don't know at this level, I mean, it's not there yet, so I'm not sure what they would, I don't know how they
We
would.
don't, they're never gonna see it,
Oh,
right?
no, that, it's not that we couldn't do it as it comes to the
We
commission.
can do a different letter. I don't know. I wanna add that, we can decide if we don't wanna approve that, but I would like to add to copy them.
Sure.
That's my first amendment.
So add coastal commission staff, I assume staff. is
Use
what you
staff, and then switch around the order of the two in the CC.
mean. Okay.
My second amendment is to the 28-day stay enforcement section. I would like to add in between, add to the beginning of the second sentence that currently starts with, "We are concerned."
Mhm.
I would like to add a section of that sentence before that states, "The developer has a history of allowing stays longer than 28 days at the other RV park he owns in the area, comma, and we are concerned that there will be a similar lack of enforcement at the new RV park."
Okay. I'll get the wording for that
Yeah.
later, but are you proposing that between the first and the second sentence?
Yeah, it's like the
Okay.
beginning of the second sentence.
Okay.
And then my third one would be to attach, I know in previous letters, we've attached an image at the end showing the current view and like an overhead of the clear view easement, which we are requesting in the Harbor Gateway section. So I would propose to attach an image, attach the view and the overhead map with a line showing where we think the clear view easement should be to the end of this letter.
So
And I
that would
have
be
those
the
documents.
image from the 2018 letter? Or do you have a
I have
different
a
one in
slightly
mind?
amended one that I will, it's just drawing the line right next to the trees instead of a little bit away from the trees.
Okay, you have those? Yeah. So we'll assume that's a motion for those amendments?
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Okay, discussion of the amendments proposed by Michelle.
I have no concerns about the preamble. Can you read that 28-day change again?
Yeah. So the paragraph will go, "The 28-day stays of RVs at the Harbor Village RV Park will be difficult to enforce. The developer has a history of allowing stays longer than 28 days at his other RV park at his other RV, I don't know if he has only one other one.
Just say Pillar Point RV.
At
Park.
Pillar Point RV Park, and, comma, and we are concerned that there will be a similar lack of enforcement at the new RV park."
Okay, so it's just a whole new sentence
Well,
between.
no.
That's too long to be part of another sentence.
No, the "we are concerned that there will be" is already there. I'm just adding, I'll show you. You can pass this down.
I'm having trouble visualizing it. Oh, you're striking the first
Oh,
sentence.
sorry, ignore that. Ignore that.
Okay.
Oh, we can strike the first sentence or we don't have to, but yeah, let's just strike the first sentence and start with the "we are," and start with the owner.
Oh, okay, now I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay. So strike the
Okay,
first
now I'm
sentence.
fine with that one.
Okay.
The image,
Can you
the image
read
is
the way
fine
that-
with
that
me
one-
too.
Can you read it for us and what you got?
Well, she's read it now. If anybody else was similarly confused, perhaps you can pass it to anybody else who's confused.
Okay. All those in favor of this amendment, raise your hands.
Discussion?
Oh, sorry, I thought there was none. Go ahead, Dan.
So, I guess I just have a little bit of concern that, the siding that you found.
Mhm.
I mean, is that strong enough to actually be on a letter to the county? I mean,
So-
is it,
There have been numerous cases confirmed of people exceeding the 28-day limit.
okay, so it's not a question at all? Okay.
Not for quite a few people.
Do we really need to strike the first sentence?
She's not proposing to strike it.
We
That
can
was-
or we
that was
can't.
me-
It's a
that was
little
me being-
repetitive.
Okay, yeah. Well, I
But we
think
don't
it's,
have to.
it kind of, yeah, I think it's a good start.
Okay.
So, okay?
You okay to vote?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Passes 6-0. Tamara, you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can hand that back to
Yes.
me again now that it's passed, I'll get it in there.
Pretty minor, but just to capture the sentiment that pretty much we're firmly opposed to this going in. The first sentence under conclusion, which now starts, based on community opposition, the MCC requests that the project not be approved, or if it is, be modified or reduced. So just switch that order to say, we don't want this, but if we have to have it, these are the conditions.
So in that, do you want to say something specific, like reduce it to a number?
Well, no, I'm just using the words that are already here. I'm just suggesting to switch the order that they're in, because it says be modified or reduced or not approved at all. But if we say first, we don't want it approved, but come around, like if maybe beyond our control, we at least would like these, the being reduced or modified.
Okay. The only question I have is, if we're going to go to reduce, would we be better off to say to 25 as opposed to reduced, you decide? I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I don't know where
25
that
seems-
fits in with, like, I'm not sure, actually, I guess that's a good question, is what reduced actually refers to, the size or the number of,
What was the intent, Dan? Was it fewer spaces or the same number but in a tighter space?
Yeah, I wanted it to be reduced 50%.
So-
Or,
So if it were to say 25 as a maximum specifically, I mean, we favor not at all, but failing that, 25? Could you work that in, Dave?
I would support that.
Okay, so where is that actually being changed?
so the first sentence of the last paragraph, the conclusion. So based on community opposition, the MCC requests that the project not be approved at all, or if it is, be modified.
To a maximum of 25.
Okay, yeah.
What did we say, not be approved at all, or at a minimum modified to?
No, maximum.
Well, maximum.
25 is a max.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking modified to
Yeah.
50% of its
Yeah.
size, but modified to, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, I'm way behind here, let me catch
Yeah.
up.
it's okay, take time. While Dave's doing that, does anyone else have any amendments? I think we're,
I'm just curious about the environmental impact.
oh, in terms of where that was going to fit?
Well, that's Dan's amendment, which we haven't gotten to.
Okay, so still got hands to go. Okay, well. So while he's doing that, Dan, are you ready with the wording on the EIR? Are you working on that?
Okay, this is not exactly your wording, but I think it reads a little bit better. Let me read it, see if you agree with it. Based on known community opposition, the MCC requested the project not be approved or approved with a reduction to 25 spaces.
I agree.
You had still have the word known in there, that was your amendment.
To take off the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we've already moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
And I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Tamara.
Tamar moves.
Tamar moved it.
I'll second it.
Dan seconds, okay.
Okay, then, we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Okay, Dan.
Okay, so I think the easiest way to do this would be to, at the very end, just add the MCC demands a full EIR report.
At the end of the climate and pollution section?
The conclusion, the very last sentence of the document.
Sounds like we're throwing a lot into the conclusion.
Well,
The conclusion?
Yeah, okay.
That's right in there.
I guess we could put it in the first sentence.
I think
On
it
the
actually
first
should
paragraph.
go in the very first
I
paragraph.
bet, yeah. I agree. Thank you, Dave. Yeah,
Okay, have you got a place where you can put it in and read back to us?
very end.
Dave's working on it. but-
Okay, so give me the wording again, Dan, first.
The MCC demands a full EIR report.
So I will slightly reword that to, first let me see where I'm putting this. Okay, I think this would best fit at the end of the first paragraph. And the wording is, the MCC demands that a full EIR report be submitted instead of the mitigated NICDAC.
Can we spell out environmental impact report, because EIR report
I-
is repetitive?
I can do that.
Alright.
You are
Report.
actually correct,
Report.
just because everybody else does it. Doesn't mean we have to.
Okay. So everybody's clear, we put that in the last sentence, okay? Dan has moved this, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Michelle. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm uneasy with the word demands. I would very much prefer requests. Is that acceptable to you, Dan?
It's gotta be something a little stronger than request. And-
Strongly requests?
Strongly request. Okay.
Strongly requests. Gives a sense of strength, doesn't it? Okay, we got that added. Okay, is council ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, are there any other amendments for
Yes.
consideration, Dan?
Sorry, community. I think we have to fit in the evacuation plan, and I think what might fit best is maybe in the last sentence of traffic impacts. And an evacuation plan needs to be addressed. Leave it at that.
I'm sorry, I have to come back because I was typing and I forgot. Who seconded Dan's motion?
I did.
Thank you. Okay, continue.
Would it be good to give that context, like, for example, since we're in the tsunami danger zone, evacuation is an important process, and having an orderly procedure for 50 RVs to evacuate.
Well, there could be a whole number of reasons for evacuation,
Right,
right?
right.
So do we want to list all the reasons? I don't think so.
Well, I think if you bring out, I thought it's, basically, we have currently 2 major evacuations, wildfire and tsunami, but we know we're sitting here in a tsunami zone, but by the time you get up to the commission, they don't necessarily think about it. But I'm easy either way.
I'm open to other suggestions, but
I'll just let it go with evacuation, that's fine.
We've talked about trying to keep it
No, evacuation.
succinct, and
I withdraw the comment. So do you have where that goes?
I did not get the wording at all.
Okay,
so-
could you?
an evacuation plan needs to be addressed
Where does it go?
at the last sentence of traffic impacts.
Okay.
Could I suggest something
Sure.
a little bit different?
Yes.
Because in the same section, right now we say the cumulative impact of future developments, additional large RVs, numerous pedestrian and bicycle crossings from the RV park would have great impact on everyone's ability to use the roads, comma, and could endanger the community in the event of a major emergency.
Street and will.
And will.
Yeah,
It's a little bit stronger.
I was,
Rather than saying the plan, like, not even a plan, because, I mean, any plan is gonna require 50 RVs to, to leave, and it's gonna be, it's gonna impact everyone if there is a major emergency and everyone's trying to get out.
so, yeah, I looked, I think, in that area to try to, but, does it fit? Wasn't it a long sentence?
It
Or do
does
you
make
think-
it pretty long. But I don't know if it's the plan that we're asking. Yeah, I mean, we could make
You
it.
could just added a new sentence at the
Yeah.
very end.
Did you want to?
This RV
So-
park will endanger the community in the event of a major emergency.
I think a plan, asking, I don't know, does anybody know of any evacuation plan that is already, is it too much of an ask for this project?
It's gonna be described evidently of the 9th, that a full evacuation plan is gonna be discussed on the 9th by the CERT process going on at the fire board, so that's a starting point.
So they can say just to see that, yeah, which would mean that Michelle's point might be, yeah, I think I like your
Yeah.
point, Michelle, yes.
So the wording is just going to be a declarative, this RV park will endanger the community in a major emergency evacuation?
I think it means, well, yeah, add to, there's already a problem, and we'll add to it.
To me, just the statement of having a good evacuation plan for 50 RVs sort of creates a great image in itself.
A couple of big Sikorskis and a lift.
Well, there are two aspects to the evacuation too, evacuating the RV park, but also the community that's evacuating.
Yeah.
Will be impacted.
I think that's the bigger concern.
Well, that's why if you mention the.
Frankly, we don't care about the RV. That wasn't actually recorded, was it, Steve?
Let them drink salt.
Okay, now, back here, do we
We've
have
been
a,
at this too
Dave,
long.
do we have a sentence?
Well, I'm not sure. Dan didn't sound completely happy about it, because it didn't have anything about it.
Say it one more time.
This RV park will endanger the community in a major emergency evacuation.
Well, I thought we were gonna say a specific evacuation plan for the RV park is needed, and then.
Therefore,
Therefore.
an evacuation plan is required.
Yeah.
I just feel like that
And then
it's not mitigated by having a plan, really. It's still gonna endanger the rest of the community.
Everybody who checks in there has to read and check off the RV. plan
Assessed,
before
yeah.
they can park.
Yeah. Well, you're right, it would automatically be part of the ER.
Well, we've got EIR,
Yeah,
we're
we've
on
got that.
evacuations now.
Okay,
I
so
think we
now,
should just somehow raise attention to it
Oh, I think we've
for the
got-
community. In the letter, we've gone this
Give it
far.
around, Dave.
so now I've got, this RV park will endanger the community in a major emergency, and therefore an evacuation plan should be prepared.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Good with that, Michelle?
Didn't
Yeah.
second it already, I think, so.
And who's second?
Who seconded this one? Tamar, you want to second it?
second this.
Tamar seconded it. Okay, all those in favor? Fine. Passes 6-0.
And now we can actually vote on it as amended.
Right, okay. Any last chance for a comment before we vote on the letter as a whole? None? Great. All those in favor? Great, passes 6-0. Thank you, we're done. Thanks, Michelle and Dan and Claire, I guess.
I will say that is the single best experience of amending a letter on the fly.
We did
in
pretty
my
good.
entire
We
time
did good.
on the council.
Yeah. Community helps, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to number C on the agenda, I spoke with our favorite Caltrans representative who had not yet secured the plan to review the safety, but he said he will have an update for me tomorrow, so I will have something to report next time. So I think that ends the regular agenda. Any council activity to be reported? No special reports there. Clearly a lot of work on letters. Okay, future agendas. So we have our
We kind of missed your C. We were hoping to hear something about Connect the Coast Side.
well, Connect the Coast Side, okay, the quick, Connect the Coast Side is part of our future agendas because they have pushed the release of something for the public to look at into November.
So it's into November.
So nothing will happen this month, into November, so it will be on the agenda for the meeting on the 13th, the first meeting in November, to just talk about, and basically at that one, either the document itself will already be released on the 13th, which hopefully it will have been, or at a minimum, we'll discuss how to conduct community review of it. Okay. So that's where we're at that. The Cabrillo superintendent will be coming to our next meeting, the first meeting in November, the only meeting in November. And basically, I'm interested in if there's anybody who would like to meet with me to discuss basically how to summarize or organize the volume of information or letters that have come in on the RV park to support an effective expression of this to the commission when they meet. So I mean, basically, I know how you do it in an informal group that wanted to bring it forward. The question is whether the MCC should put any effort into that or how they might do it. So it's something that could be brought to the meeting for consideration because that's going to be in advance of the commission doing it. My feeling, I also wrote an independent letter, you know, and I've read some of the ones that come in, they're great. And the question is how to get most leverage out of them. It's now not a point of, is this letter better than that one? They're all good, but you want the commission to feel the weight of those letters, both as what's in them and as much as possible people are there to speak to them. So, does anybody want to connect with me on that? Okay, tomorrow we'll undertake it to see if we have something to bring forward. Okay, anything else for future agendas? Okay, we also accept motions to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned. Good job, everybody.